Einen wunderschönen guten Abend auf dem Twitch-Kanal des Verbands Deutscher Schriftstellerinnen und Schriftsteller. Mein Name ist Lena Falkenhagen, ich bin Schriftstellerin, Autorin für Computerspiele und engagiere mich für AutorInnenrechte. Wir veranstalten hier auf diesem Twitch-Kanal sonst die VS-On-Lesung. Heute Abend aber veranstalten wir die Leipziger Buchmesse, die eigentlich gar nicht stattfindet. Wir lassen für uns auf dem Twitch-Kanal diese Messe trotzdem stattfinden mit mehreren Veranstaltungen, weil wir nicht nur das Publikum und den Austausch und die Büchermenschen vermissen, sondern weil wir auch den Diskurs vermissen. Und aus diesem Grunde findet hier heute Abend eine Lyrikveranstaltung statt und ich werde euch die TeilnehmerInnen gleich vorstellen. Ich möchte vorher noch kurz sagen, dass die Veranstaltung auf Englisch stattfindet. Wenn ihr also Fragen stellen möchtet, könnt ihr sie in den Chat schreiben. Ich werde sie gerne versuchen aufzunehmen. Wenn ihr nett sein wollt, schreibt ihr sie auf Englisch, damit ich im Gehirn nicht umrechnen muss. Ansonsten, wenn ihr das nicht schafft, kriege ich das auch hin, sie zu übersetzen. Ich möchte noch kurz darauf hinweisen, dass wir morgen am Sonnabend um 13 Uhr hier auf diesem Twitch-Kanal die Veranstaltung Liebesbeziehung mit Vertrag über die Beziehung, also die vertragliche Beziehung zwischen Verlag und Autor, Autorin sprechen werden. Dabei sind neben mir Tobias Kiewit, der Sprecher des BVJA und Urheberrechtsanwalt, und Herr Timo Leibig, das ist ein Autor, der sowohl im Self-Publishing wie im Verlagswesen unterwegs ist. Und Sven J. Olsson wird moderieren, das ist mein Stellvertreter im VS-Bundesvorstand. Der eine von zwei, der andere ist heute Abend hier. Am Sonntag wird es zwei weitere Veranstaltungen geben, nämlich um 14 Uhr Traum von der Bescheidenheit über den Bedarf einer Lobby für Schriftstellerinnen und Schriftsteller, wie der VS eine ist. Dabei sind Gerhard Ruiz von der IG AutorInnen Österreich, also dem AutorInnenverband Österreichs, Gabriele Albers, eine Autorin, und Leander Sukov, mein stellvertretender Vorsitzender, oder Sven J. Olsson werden moderieren. Das muss ich gleich nochmal erfragen. Genau, das sind die Veranstaltungen am Sonntag. Es gab noch den Plan für eine weitere, aber wir werden die Veranstaltung War da was, ein Jahr Pandemie, auf vermutlich in 2 Wochen verschieben, weil einige der TeilnehmerInnen zu diesem Datum nicht konnten. Genau, heute Abend aber kümmern wir uns um politische Lyrik in einer asymmetrischen Welt. Ich freue mich sehr auf den Austausch mit den 3 AutorInnen. And now I'm going to switch to English and call in Volha, Hapeyeva, Nazli, Karabıyıkoğlu, and Leander, Sukov to introduce them to you. Please do activate your cameras and your audio feeds. Thank you. Welcome.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
And now I have deactivated the sound on my Twitch in the background so that we won't have an audio feedback. I hope that wasn't too disturbing. Okay, welcome. Volha, Nazli, and Leander, I will shortly introduce you, and I will then ask you to read a couple of poems to us. If you want to, you can gladly read in your native language. Then we will have a discussion together about political poems in an asymmetrical world. And afterwards, towards the end, which will basically take 45 to 60 minutes, we will have, if you would be so kind, we would have another round of lyric poems from you. And I'm very much looking forward to you. Volha Hapeyeva, you were born in Minsk. You are Belarusian. You write prose, lyric, poems, theater, and children's books. But you're also a very established translator because you have a PhD in
linguistics.
In linguistics, yes. I'm sorry about the stutter because I just somehow minimized my video feed. I don't know how I did that. Yes, you speak an amazing amount of languages. Besides German, English, you speak Mandarin, Japanese, Ukrainian, and Latvian. And you are nowadays one of the most important lyricists of Belarus today and have received several prizes. You are a member of the Pen Center Belarus and of the Independent Writers Association Belarus. And you have debuted with your first novel, Camel Travel, which I would be very eager to read in the close future. I hope I will be able to. It's translated into English, yes?
No, it's translated into German.
It's translated into German. That's much better. Why translate into English if you can read it in German? Absolutely. Okay. Nazli Karabıyıkoğlu, you are a Turkish author and activist. You were born in Ankara, and you have studied, I think, Turkish language and literature. The university you studied at, it's an elite university. I don't know how to pronounce it. It has been put under pressure by President Erdogan.
Boğaziçi University.
Yeah.
Still under pressure.
Yes, you were one of the leading drivers of the Me Too movement. And you were basically an activist within the Turkish publishing industry and for political minorities. You are also a member of an exile refugee, we can say, within the Pen Center of Germany. The program that Leander Sukov is leading because he is the vice president of the Pen Center Germany. And that was one very elegant lead over, wasn't it? Leander, you were, I'm not telling anybody when you were born because it's not on Wikipedia actually. And you are, in 2019, two things happened. You were elected vice president or vice chairman of our Association of Writers in Germany, and you were elected vice president of Pen Center Germany, and thus you are the program lead of Writers in Exile of the Pen Center. You are a novelist and a poet, and you also write, you are also some kind of a publicist. You write for Taz and Junge Welt, among others. And but what would you consider yourself to be mainly, a poet, a novelist, or an activist, Leander?
I'm not too sure, really.
Yeah.
I think that is, it's very difficult if you have a stew to sort out whether there are more kale is in the stew or more potatoes. That is very difficult. It's a stew, and I'm a stew as well. I'm some sort of an artificial person, if you want to say so. And I'm not neither. I'm sure whether I'm a poet, a novelist, or an activist, nor I am too sure whether I'm a man or a woman.
I say yes.
So this all is totally mixed up, and I'm happy with that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that is like it always was. I started that very early, and I'm political activism since I was 15, and I'm even started earlier in activism of sexual freedom. So that is that was always my life, and but I cannot tell you. I cannot answer the question another way than eat this stew or leave it.
I see. That was a great answer. Initially I wanted to start with poems, and I think we will introduce that now. And can I ask you, Volha, to start off with a couple of poems, maybe, and read to us? Is that okay? Otherwise, I'll ask Leander.
Yeah. I really don't know. It's you're a moderator.
You start first, please.
Okay. So because our discussion is in English, I decided I also start and read the first poem in English. It is called Flocks, and it was translated by Anya Rutherford and comes from my English book, In My Garden of Mutants. Flocks comes from the Greek for flame. Perhaps whoever named it was thinking of its bright color, though in the painting La Femme aux Flocks, it's the form which impresses. The Cubists' exhibition at the start of the last century. In the language of flowers, floxes are united hearts. In the language of war, it's an artillery unit, remarkable for its accuracy of fire. A journalist writes, the factory is confident this new weapon will find its consumer. In the kingdom of war, there are other flowers too. Hyacinth, a gun with a 152mm caliber, like a drainpipe hole. Carnation, a 122mm howitzer, like a grapefruit. Cornflower, a mortar with a range of 18 meters, like a bowhead whale. Maybe these are the flowers of evil to which certain butterflies flock, or rather butterfly minds. These fit in your palm and weigh only 90 grams, like a newborn kitten or a bar of soap. I weigh it in my hand. The bathroom is quiet and safe, trusting naivety. Hyacinths, carnations and phloxes blaze in the neighbor's yard. Thank you.
Thank you, Volha. We should probably decide on if we have the person who reads on her own or his own on the screen. Should we deactivate our videos? Is that nicer? Yes, it is. Okay, so then we deactivate our videos and possibly the audio feeds as long as the person is reading. Do you have another second poem for us, Volha?
I think it will be too much, maybe.
No,
later.
it's okay. That's why we're here, to celebrate poetry.
Okay, then the second will be auf Deutsch. Auf eigene Gefahr, schwimmen im Meer oder im See, wenn keine Saison ist oder gutes Wetter oder sonst was. Wildfremde Menschen sorgen sich um die Unbekannte, obwohl da, wo man sich sorgt, gibt es Raum für Verstöße, für Verbote, Strafen, Verdammnis. Es ist nicht gestattet zu ertrinken, auf eigene Gefahr. Das zeugt mir gegenüber von Vertrauen. Allerdings, wer vertraut, ist auch gleichgültig. Willst du ertrinken? Ertrinke. Die Hinweistafeln am Ufer bezeugen Fürsorgepflicht. Für wen oder was bleibt unklar. Gott sei Dank brauchte ich kein Visum für einen Kopfsprung. Das Wasser hat seine eigene Sprache, in der Grenze einfach ein Wort ist, das man nicht braucht, wie Sorge, Vertrauen oder Pflicht. Danke.
Thank you, Volha. That was very beautiful. Nazli, would you be so kind to read us something, maybe in Turkish or a language of your choice, actually?
I would like to first read in English, maybe do the ending with Turkish. And I would like to read a prose poem from my latest novel, which will be published in German and English soon.
Okay.
Yeah,
you have the stage.
It's about a protagonist. My protagonist is an oppressed girl. About her genders now. Yeah. My stepmother took me to a Hoja who performs exorcisms to interrogate the perverted sensibilities inside me. The Hoja told me to sit on a cushion on the floor, and I crossed my legs. She slipped behind me, crouched to her knees, and held my shoulders with her 2 hands. You made sure she washed herself? She asked my stepmother, who sat on the divan behind her. I did. Euzu billahi mineşşeytanirracim. Audu billahi mineşşeytanirracim. Relax, close your eyes, and whatever happens, don't open them, the Hoca said. I nodded. La havle ve la kuvvete illa billahil aliyyil azim. La havle ve la kuvvete illa billahil aliyyil azim. She held my shoulders so tight and blew on my neck. Gather now, by the seal of the Prophet Sulaiman, by the will of Khizr, peace be upon him. Come. Her jinns must have arrived, had encircled us, and would soon pour over all the things I kept inside me. How much I hated my stepmother, and how little I loved my father. How often I touched myself, and what I thought about when I did, that I hid my pants but claimed I would lose them. What I dropped, what I'd broken, all of it returned to me, revolved around the room, and gathered itself at my knees. Get it out, she commanded them from behind me. But what? Get it out now. And she spread my arms to the side and held them parallel to the floor. Take it out of her, all of it. Get it out. Get it out. Get it out. I could feel my stepmother watching breathlessly nearby. What was I supposed to get out? Suddenly, a hand opened my mouth and pulled down on my chin. Hard, open up, Alfiye, she said. Open your mouth. I clenched my eyes tighter and opened my mouth so wide. I thought my jaw would detach itself from my skull. Seeing that, a demon lived inside me and it had to come out. Tear it up, tear it up, tear it all up. You and you keep what's left. This constant gyre of orders. My mouth was going dry. My heart was rattling. So then the spirits and the fairies had finally shown up. Gather all of it up. Hold on it tight and don't let it get away. In you, oh God, we seek refuge from the scourge of Lut's people. Amen, my stepmother said. In you, oh God, we seek refuge from sexual confusion. Amen. Do you dare commit abomination such as no creature ever did before you? Say that you repent. I repent. You really have given up on man, and now you're lustfully inching closer to women. It's true. You are the descendant of a lecherous people. Say that you repent. I repent. Say that you repent. I repent. By the road of the prophet Lot and the seal of the prophet Jonah, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, and she plunged her hand all the way into my stomach, grabbed whatever perverse and lecherous thing lurked down there and pulled it out. Make yourself vomit. I forced up what was left of my breakfast, the bread and jam, the tomato omelette. The more I vomited, the more I let myself go. Even harder, she kicked me in the back. Tear it up by the roots, she ordered me and her jeans. I let it pour out of me, the taste of her hand still on my lips. I heaved and gagged and started to cry. Then, in a single breath, she told me 3 times to pick it up and pulled me back and pressed my head to her chest. Gather it up, don't leave it behind. Take it and go. Whatever it was that had come out of Elfiye, the jeans would carry away. I opened my eyes. My heart had nearly stopped. I was expecting to see angels, fairies, and leshies, or jinns with backward twisted feet, tiny hats, and torsos made of light. But the only tangible thing was that I'd brought up from my stomach and the burning feeling running down my throat. Barakallahu minkum, alaykum, Godspeed, Gül Hoca said, and she blew her jean friends back to where would they come from. That should do it, she told my stepmother. The poor thing was possessed by a perverted jinn. She needs to stay 20 basmalas every night until her period, and when she is menstruating, she does it 666 times. Then she prays a full ablution. I tried to count the banknotes that passed away between them, but I couldn't. If the issue gets worrisome again, we will have to do a seance with fire, so bring her back right away. Elfiye walked out of the damp, foul-smelling building and left her childhood with her vomit on the floor, because she was an iron-heart girl no jinn could ever possess. Thank you.
Thank you, Nazli. That was a listener in the chat said riveting, and I do agree. Thank you. Let's enter with an easy question, I hope, into the discussion. I'd like to ask you, maybe Nazli first, when did you write your first poem? Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember.
When was it? How old were you?
Yeah, for me it was like I'm so young, like I was a child, and I didn't know how to become a writer or a poet. But we can say that it was like when I was 7 years old, when I was first time go to primary school, and I just created myself a notebook, and I wrote separate poems and songs and stories to that notebook, and I gave it to my teacher, my primary school teacher, and she liked it. And she decided to read one story or a poem from my notebook on every Friday.
Very nice. Was it? It wasn't political at first. When was your first political poem, Nazli?
I think about, it's like, since I perceived myself as a person, as a human being, I had always the urge to empathize with people, to empathize with people who were different than me. And then I just began to understand my environment, which I live in Turkey, in Istanbul. Like, the people were different from me, were the homeless people, Alevi people, Christians, Jews, Armenians, Kurdish. Also the people who were tortured in the prisons. People who had to fight for their basic rights in the 20th century. Also the people who starved and the refugees. And when I got that writing seriously, as my writing guest evolved, I had the necessity of writing those people's stories. I had to tell the streets, tell the untold, tell what no one dares to tell. And it was like, then it was like beginning of my 20s. And I just have to say that now when I look back myself and my good times, the times which I killed myself by others, by other people's pain. Now I don't think that what I write as poetry or as a short story will be permanent in the future if I insist on staying poetical. Because everything is about political now.
Thank you. Leander, I just realized that I forgot your initial poem. I'm so very sorry. We do it in the end, yes. Volha, when did you start writing poems, and when was your first political poem?
Yeah, I think also it was quite young, because I like to play different word games with my mom when we were going somewhere. And as a present for the 8th of March, this is International Women's Day, I made her a self-made book with poems about the little bear. Yeah, and the first one was about, like, he got on the bed and then he fell, and then he got again and he couldn't fall again. So maybe it was also quite a political poem for a bear or bed. But if to be serious, I think I support Nazli's argument that yeah, politics is now everywhere, and if we look at politics, or if we remember this famous thing or thesis of feminists, like private is the political, then in every poem you can find politics. Sure, it's the question what kind of politics, and so on so forth. But you know, if I know what you mean asking by political, and in that term, I think the trigger for me was the events in our neighboring country to Belarus. This is Ukraine. And when the war in Ukraine started, and I started to be involved in that process as a translator, it was really shocking for me, and I started to work with this topic, and that was in 2017.
Okay. Leander, how about you? First poem?
Yeah, I do not know when I wrote my first. I think I wrote my first poem with 6 or 7, but we will not talk about that. That is, for the very short one, I think 2 lines or maybe 4 lines. It's about a little mouse which went home. And mouse and house is a rhyme in German, so that was all about the rhyme. I think the first poems I wrote, which were published, were as I was 15 or so, and I published a lot between 15 and let's say 22, 23 in literature, papers in Germany, magazines, where we had a lot. Much more than today. And I had different names for that because I was also politically active, and it was sometimes I thought that it was better not to publish that under my normal name. Most of the names are gone. One was Gorm Grimme, I think, or Harm Grimme, something like that. Or if you find a poem somewhere with Harm Grimme as the poet, then it was me. And there were a lot, and there were small prizes I won and things like that. Yeah.
Okay, and did you mention the first political poem already? Like roughly?
And they were all yeah, they were all. I think they were all political. I think I started with political poems.
Yeah.
And maybe with some love poems, but then there was more or less private poems to my girlfriends or friends. But the poems which were published were political poems, I think. Yes, as far as I remember. They are all gone because I lost all these papers some years ago.
Yeah, so the political, like everybody, like each of you started very early, and Volha, I mean, writing the poem for your mother on Women's Day is basically a political statement with 7. That is quite early. I did write some poems in that age too, but I would rather not talk about that either. So, the reason I'm asking is because I'm very interested in what fed your experiences so much that you felt the need to express that in poetry. And the question behind that is, does your experience or the pain of others or yourself, like the pain you see in the world, does that feed your art as a poet? Maybe Nazli wants to start, because you were very prominent. You described that very prominently.
Yeah. For me, poets are either dead or alive, are the memories of a society, of a period of time, of their age. But for me, most importantly, poets are the pessimist side of life. So when I was thinking about this presumption, I just found myself thinking about the 16th century of France, like the 1500. On 1555, we all know that Nostradamus published his prophecies, which were in prose poem form. And these are really important for me because I'm really sure that we all have heard of Nostradamus predictions before, at least watched the documentary about it. But let's stay on the scientific side and try to describe what his prophecies were about. Then we have the Nostradamus just wrote about his fears about Turkish incursion to Europe, or Middle Age hegemonic dynamics, or Catholic Church violence, and especially the plague, the Black Death at that times. And those were the chaotic future predictions of him. But why chaotic? We should ask ourselves. He was perceiving his environment the worst of all times. For Nostradamus, his age was a huge chaos. We can, of course, say that as a privileged man who had his intellectual rights, he was able to write those prophecies. He had the right to write as prose poems. And those poems evolved to a conspiracy theories and still affects today's world. But like Nostradamus, if we look back at the history, that we can distinguish many chaotic scenarios. We can also remember Mad Max on 80s. On 80s, it was the biggest tale of that time, telling the collapse of the civilizations. Or if we move to 90s, the perception of the doomsday changed a bit by rising nuclear war rumors and the series of Terminator or the, if I'm not wrong, Robocop movies arised. So for me, in my opinion, it doesn't matter what ages. Every period has its own apocalypse. And for me, human nature is coded to survive, only to survive. For what it's worth, it's just about to survive. And that's why I think that the humanity owns its own apocalypse. And always we have the remains of this apocalypse by the hand of a poet or a writer, historian, as fairy tales, epics, novels. A poet is always the social memory of their age, who interprets the time they live in. And yeah, I can stop right now and give some, I just like to hear Volha's thoughts about this.
First, I'd like to read a comment from the Twitch channel. First of all, Zakdil is a user that asks, why are you all so timid about your first steps of creativity? He's quite right, actually. The first steps of creativity are not, like, even if afterwards, as grown-ups, we might see them as not perfect or as very childish, they're still like building, like the foundation of a build-up of creativity. And he also says, doomsday media obsession has grown over the years and reached some kind of inconsequential apathy nowadays, much like the apathy when faced with failures of current society, like climate capitalism, reactionary movements. Also, I think we can discuss about this. It's not wrong. So the pessimist side of life, Nazli, you said, and I had to think of the canary in the coal mine. Are poets as societies canaries in the coal mine, Volha?
Thank you for this wonderful comment.
Sorry.
No, I was really, like, oh, Nazli is talking about Nostradamus, is great. and then you said this phrase, but let's stay on the scientific. And I know, but sometimes it's like, why should we, in our world, or I don't know, Western European or this European world paradigm, we think that science is like, oh, science, and then like nobody will say nothing. But there are other types of knowledge, yeah, like you said. And I think poetry is also this other type of knowledge through which we transform what we know and understand as poets to the world. And I think that, yeah, maybe poets function as membranes, to this world. And that's why, for example, there are so many poets because we have all our tunes or these soundings, yes. And there are some people, for example, why some poetry is close to you, why some is not, why, you prefer this poet or that, just because I think you sing or you tune on the same how is it called in the theory of sound, on the same level of this ultrasound, or I don't know.
Is it tune? I don't quite.
Tune. I think tune. So
frequency.
The frequency. Yeah, the same frequency. And then when I go on the same frequency as that person, he or she will understand my poems, poetry, or things like that. But also your question was, could you please remind me a bit, because I kind of was reacting more to that, what Nazli said.
That's perfectly
interesting.
That's okay. perfectly fine. I was talking about the canary in the coal mine, basically, as the poet as a sort of alarm mechanism of society, of a dysfunctional society, actually, repressive society. And I'll hand that question to Leander now.
I really do not know. I'm writing because I have to be very honest. If I do not write, I cannot sleep. If there is an idea in my head, I really cannot sleep. I get crazy if I cannot write it out. So if a dictator wants to really get me in a bad situation, he must take away everything where I can write on. Then this would kill me, actually. I have to write, and it was always that way. Even if I was 14 or 15, I wrote in the middle of the night at 4 o'clock in the morning. I went out of my bed and wrote because I had to. And that's still the same. And my political poems are what I see, actually. They are very near to the reality. They aren't, this is not, how do you call it, a poetic eye. That is not me looking at, I'm not reporting about my feeling when I see something, I'm reporting about what I see. And this, of course, is the color of that is the color that is in me. That is absolutely sure. And I think there was always, from the beginning on, it was a way to get out of the pressure, which was always there. And there was a personal pressure at the beginning, which had a lot to do with me personally and with the society. And it had a lot, and my views had also a lot to do with what I read as I was 13, 14, 15. And this was something else. I never read children's literature, actually, except Kalle Blomqvist, which was read to me by my mother. But I personally read Jean Genet or things like that, Heinrich Heine, Tucholsky, Erich Kästner. Sartre, very late, but not.
I read Sartre at that age.
Yeah. And that, of course, that is something which forms you, and which forms your view on the world. And then there was all my personal difficulties, which I knew that I cannot talk about certain things because what I did actually was prohibited by law. And things like that. That was the world which I'm always were in, and that went on, and I'm just writing it down.
So for you, like writing and maybe writing of poetry is like not an emotional form of I don't know, a coping mechanism. It's more like you said, it's like observing something. I mean, it's still filtered by your basically take on things and how you see the world around you and the people, but it's more like an analytical thing.
Maybe I should give you an example and read a poem. In 2012, the German newspaper or magazine, The Spiegel, reported from Basra. You have a lot of children dying in Basra by nuclear, the nuclear iron parts of munition used in the war in Iran. And a farmer from Basra had made a yard for these dead children because there were none. And I read that and I wrote the following poems. And this is very much how poems works. Unfortunately, Nazli will not understand that, I'm afraid. Der Kinderfriedhof von Basra. And everything in that is true. There is nothing which is added by me. It's everything is true. Der Kinderfriedhof von Basra. Das Kind mit den 4 Händen hält schützend im Grab noch die beiden Köpfe des anderen Kindes. Sie singen ein Lied für Ahmad, den Kleingebliebenen, keinen Kehlkopf, keinen Mund. Sie singen ein Lied für Mahmud, den sie erwarten im ewigen Heim, noch an diesem Tag, bevor die Sonne sich senkt über Basra. Sie singen ein Lied für Yusuf, den Jungen mit dem Zitronengehirn, den sie erwarten über die Nacht. Sie tanzen umschlungen einen langsamen Tanz auf dem Kinderfriedhof von Basra. Es erleuchtet die Nacht, der ewige Krieg. Es tanzt im Licht des Tages der Staub der Uranmunition. Schweigend hört, unbewegt schaut die Koalition der Willigen. Das Lied, den Tanz, es tagt überm Friedhof der Kinder. Es senken sich neue Särge hinab.
Leander, thank you for this poem. Of course, I didn't understand it properly, but I felt it because I have the first person commitment to this story, because one of my old friends was working in Basra, and he was working for a big oil company, and for going to that oil company's plant, he had to wear some special clothes to protect him from the bullets or something.
Yeah, ammunition, yeah.
And as he was driving with the special forces, into the desert, he saw a boy's body on the desert, on Basra, and he just wanted to stop and maybe just gave a proper burial to those boys, but he couldn't because the armed forces told him that you cannot stop here. And he was from Amsterdam, by the way, and he was so shocked, and he just saw the dead body of the boys, and it was just like a catastrophe. And many years ago he told me about it, and I just wrote a story about it. So I just thank you for this poem. I just I didn't understand it, but I felt it.
Okay, thank you.
It's very grim and, as you said, very real, and that makes it even grimmer, I think, because it is, and that's the tragedy of many of these stories. It's so avoidable. It's just überflüssig im Deutschen. Absolut überflüssig, ja. Yeah. So with Volha and with Nazli, we've talked in 2 other events about censorship. Censorship in Turkey and censorship in Belarus and Eritrea. And we've talked, I think it was a comment by you, Nazli, about the 3 forms of censorship for political reasons, like the inner censor, and so to avoid it, the censorship by your surroundings, your fellow, your family, your colleagues, and last, the official censorship by the government. And I'd like to ask you if you yourself ever censor yourself for other reasons than political fear, because at the moment you're in Germany, and I do very much hope that you don't have to have fear about what you write about. So is there still something you censor yourself about, and you say, I'd rather not write about that, or this is not the way I should write about it? Maybe start with Nazli, yes.
Okay. I think before writing about it, my challenge was living about it, because I was living in a really strong peer pressure. Mm-hmm. And I had lived in Istanbul, and in Istanbul, the peer pressure was occurring on behalf of the culture and the civilization level of the neighborhood. And the effect of peer pressure forces people to a censorship. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was not like volunteering censorship, but, you know, I just want to emphasize that before writing, before expressing myself, I have to live my life in the streets. I just want to walk freely on the streets in my neighborhood. So this peer pressure just went to me like I couldn't wear what I wanted. I couldn't act like in my natural habitat. So, and it just got worse and worse. And after the 2016 coup in Istanbul, we can talk about that coup, but it's not the topic of tonight. Mm-hmm. But after the coup, the masculine performatives of the people arose, and it became impossible to exist, not only as a woman or as a LGBTQI+, but not being as them, or even in the street. It was just impossible to exist. So my writing was impacted because all of this. Because of course I'm so sensitive. That's why I'm writing. Mm-hmm. And it became nearly impossible to write for me, even. Can you imagine like that? Because I just locked myself in my apartment, and I had the fear of going outside, because whenever I go outside, it's so systematic that I was harassed. And yeah, maybe Volha can say more words about this.
Mm-hmm. But still, if you right now in Germany, is there something you'd rather leave out or censor yourself about living in a free society?
This is a really hard question. Mm-hmm. Because I just hate myself for saying this, but I lived in different countries in different times. And in Georgia, I lived 3.5 years. I stayed in Baku, Azerbaijan, mm-hmm. and I lived in Istanbul. Now I'm in Nuremberg, Germany. I can honestly say that it's my 3rd month here, and I didn't get harassed here physically or with words or yeah. But you know that my people from Turkey, they are living here, and I just got that looks, you know. I'm sorry to say this, but for example, yesterday for the pandemic, the Nuremberg's lockdown ended and the cafes and the restaurants open now. And all the people are in the streets now. They're drinking their coffees, eating their soups, etc. And I had to go out today, and I was wearing a really short shirt, and I had that looks, and it was from my people. I knew that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, except I don't know. I just don't want to be just blame it to the race, but I think it's about masculinity, and it doesn't change whether you change your geography, whether you change the city you live in.
Okay, thank you. Well, yeah, the ball is in your field about censorship and taking censorship with you in a way, like Nazli described. So is there stuff, topics, feelings, emotions that you would rather leave out and not, like, for any reasons at all, put into your poetry?
Well, maybe my self censorship concerns the quality of the poem I write. And if I feel like, no, it's too, I'm not sure about the English word, placative or something, I wouldn't do that because still, I mean, in spite of the fact that I think, for example, this or that topic is important, political, and I would like to do, to write about it, but if it doesn't work through if I can't find the poetical way to describe it, to work with it as a poet, then I just will not do this. The other thing is also maybe with time, I understand that I don't want to multiply aggression and violence. So that's why I also take care of like not to sound as well kind of judgmental, you know, because I'm who am I to judge, you know? So I can like, yeah, maybe Leander's strategy, like observer, it's very clever and good one. Yeah. So, yeah, like this.
So you're drawing basically a border at somebody else's feelings and minorities' feelings, for example, and judgmental ways. Leander, what's I have a feeling that your take on this is very different. Like,
yeah, there's no reason, you know, there's no reason to hide too many things. I'm hiding things because I do not want other people to be involved in what I write, because I take them as some sort of a figure, you know, which coming up again in my novels or so. Then I try to avoid that. But there is not much which I'm hiding, and I have a very small private life, you know, that is the most of my life is even open to the public, and that was always the case, because I have decided at one point in my life, I decided to be some sort of a role model, if you want to say so. I wanted to encourage, encourage people to be brave enough to live their lives. And that is only possible if you show that you can do so, and you must have a person who is doing that, despite all the difficulties which comes up then. And so that is the same, but that's in my writing, and that is in my personal life. So I'm not hiding very much. I'm hiding because I want not to put other people into the light without asking them. That is.
And the judgmental thing. So does art, I mean, political poetry, is it okay to judge other people?
That depends on what it means.
Is it necessary? Is it even necessary to judge?
Yes, but not people. I'm a radical leftist.
So not individual people, right?
No, but I do not understand the idea that people are being bad because they are in a function where they cannot escape, because the whole society is like that. They are not bad capitalists. If there is one, then he is a bad person and not a bad capitalist, because he is in the situation where I was one as well before. He is in a situation where he cannot act different. If he acts different, the whole thing crumbles down. So that is the point. The system makes the things, and you must put that to the system. And of course, I have poems with appellation to people to act against war, against the things like that, and even asking them, why don't you act against that? But that's not the point. I believe that you must fight against dictators, wherever they are. Nobody has a right to put up dictatorships nowhere and for no reason, and that's all. But then this is also a system. It's that you cannot, as a one person, you cannot put up a dictatorship without having other person which are doing that. With you, together with you. You can, one person out of, I do not what, 16 million can do nothing. So he needs to have people supporting him. And then you have a system. And then you must ask why there could be a system which brings that up. And I think that is something, otherwise the poems aren't. It's also the question of family, where I come from. I came from a family with an anti-fascistic family, a brave family, and we're fighting the Nazis. So that is what we did. And we have one thing, and is discipline. And I learned that having a mood is a nice thing as long as you keep the mood to yourself and not to the public. To the others, you have to keep your discipline to do things. And if you can't do things, then you must go out of the situation and keep the space, give the space for somebody else who can do that. So that is, I think that is coming up in my writing as well.
I want to pick up something that you said, Leander, about impacting others. So you said, you talked about appellation, about trying to make people act up against war, against dictatorship, etc. Is that something, Nazli and Volha, something that is driving your writing of poetry too? Do you want to impact others, or is it more, like Leander said, something that comes from inside yourself that needs to get out? Nazli, what would you say?
Depending on Leander's words about all the trouble is about system, I truly agree with that. But I think that the system comes from the humanity's evil side. The system's just driving from the humanity's evil side, and every poet or every writer has their ecopolis in their times. And for me, I wake up every day to another femicide in Turkey. This shapes my everyday life. and or to another trans murder, to another hate speech. And most of the days that I'm so sensitive for this, I cannot even move my body sometimes. And for me, the apocalypse is occurring every day as the speed of limit of the internet, you know? And okay, now I'm living in Germany, and sometimes I just want to deal with the first world problems, like sending my trash to garbage properly, sending my paper waste to my blue labeled paper trash properly. I want to do that, but I was born to in a third world country, and I don't know who called the third world country. Who mentioned this? What is first world and what is third world? And here, where I stand, what I'm pretty sure about, it's about also about Leander's speech. For me, dictators can come and then they go. Just see the Saddam Hussein case, you know, and or we can go back to time and see the seniors who were ruling their castles. Oppression comes and go or stay, but it's all about evil and good. For me, it's about humanity, the yin and yang, the politics of governments. They want to change, or they want to just be a parasite on their people and stay the same. And for me, the permanent and constant thing is how the humanity is affected by those changes, how the humanity perceives those aids, those decades, the repression, emancipation, the masculinity performatives, the patriarchy. It's in Turkey, I can say that for the call of this gathering, you gave me a little speech, a little writing about tonight's topic, and it was about the climate crisis, it was about the government changes, and it was about migrations. But when I thought on it, I can clearly say that in my country, in Turkey, its water level is already high. And we don't care about the water level, or we don't care about the climate change. We care about walking freely and safely in the streets as women, as non-male humans. The contamination is so high, and there is war in Turkey, and there is migration. All of my friends are now in the process of migrating to European or American countries. Okay, and or they are just dreaming about it. But for me, as an author, as a poet, it's my country is my apocalypse, you know. And I also emphasize this, we cannot say the apocalypse, which I'm true, or my people are true, that won't affect Europe or other first world countries. Maybe one day a wealthy Middle Eastern country agree on building another channel, you know, beginning from Africa. and there will be another refugee and migrant crisis. So who will be the affected and the affecter?
I see. Well, yeah, what about you? Do you agree? Like, is poetry about impacting and affecting people? Or is it more about you, actually?
Poetry is about everything. But it's really, I'm just sitting here and listening to us and think it's really like some kind of Upanishad where, I don't know, having this exchange of very deep philosophical topics. And one of them is this problem of evil. Yeah, the banality of evil. Hannah Arendt,
Yeah,
also
absolutely.
very not easy question, because I also have so many contradictory thoughts. Really, whether a person is born like tabula rasa and then he or she acquires this evil side later during the process of growing, is it like, I don't know, circumstances, traumas which makes something to his or her soul, or we already are born with these things, and we, it doesn't matter how much you try. The person said it's also so tricky. What I think is really, there is this unexplainable for me. I mean, I haven't yet grasped it. I think I will spend the rest of my life trying to understand that, how it all works, and why there are those people who do those terrible things. I can't just imagine. I mean, for me, but maybe it's just because, yeah. But and then my second thought, like, why does universe or whatever gives us such people? Do we need them to, I don't know, to do what? So it's always like, do we really have this, like the struggle, eternal struggle between light and darkness? And if yes, then sure, you at some point in your life you have to choose the sides. Although, very often people from dark side think they struggle for light sides. I'm not sure if vice versa is also true. But I think poetry, or at least I want to hope that reading poetry and being closer to poetry can bring up and can really does something to your soul. And if maybe starting from childhood or something, learn how to be attentive to these details, to little creatures, like a mosquito or a fly or little, I don't know, bird. And if you grow up with this, and if you understand maybe how beautiful and important that you are the same as this bird or mosquito, maybe it will make us a better society. At least I want to hope for this, that with poetry we can raise this empathy, the level of empathy, which is so important, because with this you really can see another person in that person whom you're looking at right now, because very often we are so much, we take any slight difference like the main thing, and then we think, no, that person is different from me. He or she is not human anymore because she is gay or lesbian, because he is married, she doesn't have children, or she writes poems, or something else. This stigmatization and dehumanization, which happens so often now in our society. I think the possible remedy for that would be really empathy.
And it sounds like you feel like poetry is empathy.
As a way to
clad in words.
Is a way to how to say, to grow it in a person.
That's a very.
I think writing, even if you write poetry or even if you write prose, it isn't possible without empathy.
Yeah.
And as you empathize with other people, for me, it's just killing yourself, you know, it's a choice of life. Whether you choose to live with the ignorance, with the beliefs, ignorance is bliss.
Yes, absolutely.
We could all do that. We could all do that.
Yeah.
But we just, I don't know, maybe it's a gift, maybe it's a talent, I really don't know, maybe it's a level of perception of human life. But I agree with Volha, but it's a little bit of, yeah, we can use the pessimist side of literature, or we can use the optimistic side of literature, and it's just the reader's choice of reading.
Leander, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I think that is also this empathy which you have for people and for situations, of course. That's not only for people, it's also, I do not know how to say that. I think situation is the wrong word, but you may understand what I mean. Makes you also, brings yourself in danger. And I have a few poets which are my favorite poets, Heinrich Heine, for instance, and Vladimir Mayakovsky. And if you read the work which they have, then it's always that they are living near to an edge where they can fall. Yeah, always. It's always near to fall, because it's overwhelming sometimes, and I think that happens to all of us.
I think that what Nazli said, just like this level of perception that you talked about, and Leander did that too, the seeing too much, knowing too much, understanding the situation too much, like having empathy not only for other people, but for situations and for maybe for conflict, and that is a level of empathy actually, is quite correct. That basically writers or poets especially do see that. Speaking of impacting others, I would like you to do your magic and impact others again. And this time I would like to start with Leander, because he was left out in the beginning. First of all, thank you for this very philosophical discussion. Please, Leander, would you care to read something to us?
Yeah, then I read two poems, which well, the other one I have a very large desk. Okay, they are both. It's a little bit of stew again, and a lot of things which are doing has to do with cooking a stew. Now, the first thing is an adaptation from me to William Shakespeare. Now, in an English discussion, you hear the German adaptation of a sonnet from William Shakespeare, the sonnet 121, which starts in original, "It's better to be vile than vile esteemed." Ist besser verdorben auch zu sein, als nur dafür zu gelten. Denn ist man's nicht, so wird der Vorwurf doch gemacht. Und man versäumt die Lust, die sie verdorben schelten, die sie, nicht wir, mit solchem Wort bedacht. Sollen andere mit Augen falsch und ganz verkommen stiften das Seelenheil fürs lebensfrohe Blut. Auf meine Schwächen starrt der Schwächling, ganz benommen und nennt nach seinem Willen schlecht, was für mich gut. Ich bin, was ich bin. Was meine Sünden wiegen, geht euch nichts an. Wiegt besser eure aus. Ich stehe gerade. Ihr müsst euch stets verbiegen und eure stinkenden Gedanken sind mir ein Graus. Sei denn, eure Schlechtigkeit wird allgemein. Sind alle schlecht wie ihr, geht Schlechten gut allein. Und das andere hat vielleicht ein bisschen was damit zu tun. Und vielleicht auch ein bisschen damit, dass man, sorry, then I should that's why the poem was in German. And the next one has a little bit to do with the translation of that and with the Shakespeare's on that. Because you must, whatever you are, whoever you are, and whatever you believe in, you must be yourself. And this is about two girls I saw while I was walking through Berlin near the place where I lived before. Das Mädchen vor mir auf dem Trottoir der Friedrichstraße tanzt mit jedem Schritt wie hingehaucht, ganz selbstvergessen einen Salzer. Sie trägt Doc Martens und einen Schottenrock. Schwer über ihren Schultern liegt eine Lederjacke voll mit Stickern. Das Mädchen biegt nach rechts ab, wo man den Rudi Dutschke tot erinnert. Sie tanzt ganz leicht durch den Touristenstrom, beschleunigt ihren Schritt, ja, läuft nun und tanzt dabei noch immer einen Salzer und winkt, hüpft auf und ab, voll Freude fällt einer um den Hals vom Taz-Café, wie man Geliebten an die Gurgel geht. Die andere, sie trägt einen Pluderhosen-Overall, ein Kopftuch auch, das eng sich legt um Stirn und Haar, die beiden küssen sich und die Salzer tanzte, beugt ganz zurück die andere, wie um zu herrschen kurze Zeit auf leichte Art. Und für die kurze Zeit, so scheint's mir, wird ihr Kuss zum Kusse einer Wölfin. Als ich vorüberging, bemerke ich, dass mich ein Gramm des Glücks der beiden unheimlich angesprungen hat. Dankeschön.
Very wonderful. The flow of that second poem was very driving, very intense, I think. Yes, and now I'd like to ask Nazli to read us something, maybe. In which language are you going to read?
I would like to read in Turkish.
Absolutely, I would love to hear it. Turkish is such a beautiful language.
I'm sorry that you won't understand it.
Me too.
But the title is The History of the Prophets. I just wrote this as a criticism to the perception of an Ottoman Empire's perception of Islam.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Peygamberler tarihi. Zıplarken eline çarpıp bir anlık şaşkınlıkla parmağına incecik ayaklarıyla sarılan çekirgeyi gözü hizasına kaldırdı. Antenlerin dibinde sarı gözlerine baktı. Hoplayarak geçecek, yapraktan yaprağa çizilmiş ömrü gördü. O zayıf tutunuş, parmağı üstü bir iplik. Ona çekirge olmadan evvel ne yapardın diye sordu. Çekirge durgun duyargasından konuştu. İnsan toprağında çok büyük bir suç işlendi. Tedirgindi, her an sekip gideceği korkusuna düşmüştü. Telaşlandı, ince bacakları ürkütmeden elini yüzüne yakınlaştırıp onu burnuna yakın tuttu. Başının üstünde birbirlerinin yapraklarına saygılı ağaçlar, dallarıyla ışığı kırarak birleşiyorlardı. Kulağına dolan uzaktaki suyun sesi, birazdan diline özlediği damlanın düşeceğini müjdelese de, çekirgeyle tesadüfünün hikmeti, susuzluğuna üstün geldi. Suç neydi Yeşil Hazret? İnsan toprağında çok büyük bir suç işlendi. Bu yüzden yer yarıldı, gök ağladı. Elini burnuna iyice yaklaştırıp çekirgenin adım atmasını bekledi. Atarsa gücen, atmazsa ben onlardan değilim. Zıpladı çekirge. İki gözü şaşı. Nefesini esirgedi ki ürkmesin. Söylesin ne oldu? İnsan toprağında çok büyük bir suç işlendi. Yer yarıldı, gök ağladı, güneş sustu. Çünkü adil ve yüce orman işkence edilerek öldürüldü. O ki evrenin ruhunun üflendiğiydi. Başını eğdi, gırtlağından sustu. Türü adına utandı. Ayrıldığı bir yer vardı. Çekirgeye onu anlatmak istedi. Dudağıysa aşağı inip onu susturdu. Yapışıp iki kıvrım arasına dilinden gelecek şiddeti önledi. İnsan toprağında çok büyük bir suç işlendi. O topraktan senede iki ürün alan, sürüsünü doyuran, sadakati olmayanlara yerdirendi. Yağma attan başladı, gergedana yürüdü, aslanın başında nefeslendi. Hepsinin derisini yüzüp kendi saçların üzerine başlıklar, ellerinden uzanan pençeler, sırtta heybetli pelerin, boyunda iki kaval kemiği, mabetleri olanların toprağında çok büyük bir suç işlendi. Dil hareketsiz kalınca insan olmanın haysiyeti zayıfladı. Genzinden çıkardığı seslerle çekirgeye bir şeyler söylemek istedi. Çekirgenin ise gözlerinin dibinde siyah lekeler bürüdü. Bir zaman vasıl oldu ki merhameti bol kozmos insan bedeninde yeniden can buldu. Onun için bağışlanma ve merhamet diledi. Işıktan can evini o insanın alnına, ciğer üçgenine, bir de kasığına koydu. Çimen, ağaç, hayvan, su ve diğerleri huşudan uyandı. Orman yine insan için sonsuz varlığından ayrıldı. Çekirge gözüne tırmanıverdi. Kirpiğinden güç alıp göremediği bir yere zıpladı. Çekirgeye seslenmek için sesini aradı. Oradaydı ama ağzını açıp varlığını seslendirmeye cesaret bulamadı. Susuzdu, daha hızlı yürüdü. Üstündeki abanın günlerdir ağırlaşmış kokusu açlıkla birleşince suyun imgesine daha bir tutunur oldu. Birkaç saat sonra parıldayan suyu gördü. İçti. İçti. Durdu, yine içti. Doyunca bir kez daha. Diline bir dil dokundu. Kendini geri çekti. Ağız aralığında diş etini ısırıp öylece kala kalmış balığa baktı. Onu yoluna salmak için suya eğilse de balık atlamadı. Kuyruğunun iki yanından tutup gövdesini yüzüne paralel hale getirdi. Biraz sağa çevirince iki yandaki gözlerinin tekiyle karşılaştı. İnsan bedenine bürünüp ona kozmosla bütünleşmeyi öğretecektim. Kuyruğu parmaklarını acıttı. Elini hafifçe kaydırıp pullarından kavradı balığı. Tam ortasından, sıkmamak için pür dikkat. Ne öğretecektim? İnsan bedenine bürünüp ona kozmosla bütünleşmeyi öğretecektim. Ki insan ahlaki saflığı öğrenebilsin. Böylece ruh kendini maddeden sıyırsın. İnsanın ormanda ona zarar vermeden kalmasını sağlayacaktım. Toprakta yaşayanın sesine erişmesi zor olsa da imkanlar dahilindeydi. Sudakinin sözüne karşı topraktakinin sözü gülünçtü. Isırılmış dilini çevreleyen dudaklarının da el verdiğince genzinden yine bir hırıltı çıkarıp onunla konuşmaya çalıştı. Neden kalamadı? Kalamadık. Sözüm yok mu sana? İnsanın ormanda ona zarar vermeden kalmasını sağlayacaktım. Bunun için suyun toprağa kavuştuğu yerden sadece sizin için çalıştım. Yoğurdum, fosforumu yükledim. Gözünü açtığında ona suyun sözünü üfledim. Kendi halinde bir kadının kucağına bıraktım. Küçüktü. Evet, ben de uçtum. Uçarken gökten de yardım istedim. Ufarak dişlerinin geçtiği yerlerden dilinin arkasına doğru süzülen kanın tadını alabiliyordu. Ağzının boşluğunda ses büyüdü. Kulağına vurdu. Ama onunla anlaşamadı. Balık da tuttuğu eti salladı ve ters bir taklayla suyu atladı. Sakin suyu geçti, karşı kıyıya vardı. Biraz da yürüdükten sonra yamaçtan yukarı tırmandı. En tepede, ileride bir orman daha sonra ardında beyaz dağa uzanan şehri gördü. Midesi şarkıda, soluk burnunda. Abanın ıslanmış etekleri bile hafifledi. Ormanın girişindeki çalılar eteğin altına ulaşıp bacağını dağladı. Diken kundurasını delip tabanın altını yaraladı. Bir an nemden, bir an serinden geçti. Karşılıklı durup gövde büyüten, çürüyüp içten kabuklanan bir mezar yahut bir yuva olan ağaçların kabuklarına dönüp ilerledi. Derken bir köke takıldı ve yüzüstü düştü. Toprak başını çeker, bileklerini kök tutar, karnından dibe bağlandı. Fısıltı kulağının salyangozuna doldu. Burnunun içi toprak çamura dönmekte. Yüreği sıkışınca duydu. Çocuğu kucağınıza vermekten bin pişman olduk. Orada solucanların kımıltılarından geçip tohumun kokusunu aldı. Burnu daha sivri olsa iyice eşleyip tohumun yüzüne bakacaktı. Sesi ulaşır mı bilmeden yeryüzüyle dolmuş ağzını oynatamadı. Boğazından ve göğsünden saldığı hırıltılarla sordu. Neden? Çocuğu kucağınıza vermekten bin pişman olduk. Göğün üstünde olanın varlığını, duyumsamış olanı. O ki sesini sözcüğe bürürken hep bizi düşündü. Çıkmadı tözsüz. Tek bir cümle ağzından, ona ilahi olan demeleri için değil, bilişine erdiğinden güneşini, yıldızın ötesindeki bulutu tozdan, onu belinden ve ayağından yaratılan yaklaşmayınla. Arzın sıcağı gömülen etine değdikçe abası delindi. İçinden kurtlar böcekler geçti. Üstündeki bütün kumaşlar yendi. Çırılçıplak toprak kaldı. Çocuğu kim ne yaptı? Yüzünü yerin, suları, hayvanları, ormanları sunan emrin, tanesi yerden oynamayan düzeninin atan ritmi. Dallarımızla, kurtlarımızla, dikenlerimizle daldık göğsüne. İnancımızı onun kaburgasının içine sakladık. Ondan önceki tanrıları ve ondan öncekileri de sakinleştirip suretini sizden kıldık. Halbuki o havaydı, tırnaktı, yeleydi, kozaydı, trakeydi, likendi, kalktı ve sizlere yalnızca alçak gönüllü olmanızı söyledi. Peki biz ne yaptık? Biz ne yaptık? Sorusu çıkmadı, soluğu içi toz. Kustu tükürdü onu kozmos. Topraktan kökten fırlatılıp başını da dine çarptı. Üryan haline aldırmadan yürüdü. Şehir yakın şehir, aklı ondan uzakta. Vaisyaların söylediklerini suduralara aktarmaya giden bir haberciydi. Dili olduğundan onu seçmişlerdi. Var git onları söyle, bir kez daha ışığın kızı bizden doğdu. O zaman onlara kadar orman bizim, hayvanlar bizim, kürkler, dişler, sular bizim. Kabullenişlerine her zaman iletecek bir bilgimiz var. Ya da bilişten öte karanlık kalsınlar. İki kolu ağır, bacakları taşımaz 33 yıldır ona yüklenmişi. Sık ağaçların ötesinde şehre varan patikaya ve düzlüğe açılan aydınlığı gördü. Daha hızlı koşabilmek için bir şey yemesi lazımdı. Çöktü. Köklerin diplerinde lezzetli mantarlar aradı. Bulunca dişlerini kazımak isterce ağzına doldurdu hepsini. Yuttu. Yuttukça güç topuğundan kirpiğine dağıldı. Adımlarını sıklaştırınca koşmak gibi bir şeye dönüştü. Hızlandıkça yerden yükseldi. Karnı sıkıldı, nefessiz kaldı. Sandı. Kılları derisine batan bir yumuşak sert şeyin içinde sarmalandı. Yumuşak şey onu yukarıya kaldırdı ve onu gözlerine denk getirdi. O ise yumruklarından daha büyük gözlerin dehşetiyle tıkandı. Beline dolanmış hortumla kollarıyla sarıldı. Kirlenmiş hayvanı sürüsünden atacak olanı dinle. Belini saran hortumun altından belli belirsiz seçebildiği üçgen ağzın içindeki Allah'a vuruldu. Ne büyük dildi o. Onun gibi sesler çıkaramıyordu. Ciğerinin altından kesmişti nefesini. Kirlenmiş olan neydi? Kim atacaktı onu? Kirlenmiş hayvanı sürüsünden atacak olanı dinle. Siz ormanın düşmanları, size eyvah olsun eğer umudunuz vahşinin lütfu değil de gazabıysa, eyvah ki onun gücünü mucizelerle kanıtmasını isteyenlere. Bilin ki onun gazabıyla yok edeceği şeyler putlar ve şehirler değil, onları yapanlardır. Bir yüce ışık neden kendini insanlara adasın? Canları kalbine indi. Orada bir kurtçuk, bir de yılan gördü. Bedenini sıcağa ve kurtlara teslim edip yatırıldığı yerde kıvrıldı. Kemiğiyle ve iliğiyle çekirgenin, balığın ve filin yemi oldu. O, yeni dünya insanına görüneceği güne kadar kasnakta kaldı. Ve sonra, beni niçin arayıp buldunuz diye sordu. Annemin evinde bulunmam gerektiğini bilmiyor muydunuz? 3 gün geçti ve komutan o mezarı başka bir yere taşımaları için askerlerini görevlendirdi. Ertesi gün insanlar mezarın yanına geldiklerinde mezarı açık ve boş buldular. Bedenler yerinde yoktu. Anlatamadıklarına ağıt olsun. Vaisyaların söylediklerini Sudralara aktarmaya giden bir haberciydi. Aslında insanın insanı dediğini demeye gidiyordu. Dankeschön.
Vielen Dank, Nazli Karabıyıkoğlu.
I'm sorry that it was quite long.
It was very beautiful. I like the language. Sounds really, really lovely. I had the pictures of. Do you know Schmetterna's Moldau? It sounded like a small tiny river growing and growing and growing and bubbling, and it rose to a height, then it got a bit smaller and slower again, and then it came to a.
Can you please email me that? Just write this, yeah.
Yeah, it was very lovely. So, and now we're coming to an end with Volha Hapeyeva, and I would like to ask, which language are you going to read us from, Volha? Have you decided?
Yeah, so I will read in English the poem, which was inspired by also one piece of news which I read, that actually really birds are forgetting their songs now. I mean, and it's also a very big ecological problem, but it's really, this kind of news strike me as much as like when we hear about some conflicts.
Yes, we are here to talk about political poetry, so you go ahead and I will listen.
Thank you. Someone is burning pages of poems in the universe's attic, perhaps as a sign of protest, because the birds keep forgetting the lines of their songs, now and then inserting the quivering of wires or mimicking the rhythm of rattling trains. Or maybe this is the fastest way for silence to reach its recipients. Silence in which the meanings of all the dictionaries in the world are hidden, and others too. So weightless, so meaningful, this ashy snow outside the window. It will take him less than a minute, but for me, it will take an eternity. Thank you.
Very lovely. Thank you, Volha Hapeyeva. Thank you, Nazli Karabıyıkoğlu. And thank you, Leander Sukov, for being.
And thank you, Lena Falkenhagen.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening my long Turkish.
It was lovely. Yes, thank you for being in our Twitch channel tonight, talking about lyrics, poetry in an asymmetrical world, where power is not distributed evenly, but very unevenly at times, and what poetry tries or tries not to do in a political fashion. Thank you for this evening. I hope our viewers and our audience had some fun. You are getting, you have received a lot of applause in the chat. I just give that, hand this on to you. Thank you for this evening, and to everybody who stayed with us. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for listening.